neither is missing at any one point. You want to try and maintain it in the middle, where you've got a nice balance of playfulness and seriousness, without being caught up in either or, and adapting to a given scenario. So sometimes you might have to slide on the scale. On that basis, the main thing is that when you are being playful, just be aware and sensitive to who's in the room and where they are, right? When I teach martial arts, the first thing I do is I get into the room and I kind of sense where everyone's at. And it comes through, so it's important that, you don't try too hard, that you try and have this natural flow about the moment, being in the moment. Okay, welcome to the Martial Mind Power podcast, guys. Today, we've got Jatinder Palaha and myself, Sifu Lak, and we're going to take you through today's koan, okay? So Jatinder's going to do the honors, and he's going to pick out a koan from The Art of Thinking Without Thinking.
Welcome, everybody, and today we're going to be referring back to the great book, The Art of Thinking Without Thinking, and we're going to pick a topic at random to see what we converse about this time on the Martial Mind Power podcast. So, as always, just going to randomly just go to the book and stop at a page. Let's see what it is. All right. So, playful seriousness, serious playfulness. That's on page 622. All righty.
Okay. All right. Playful seriousness, serious playfulness. All right. So let me just show the image on the camera there. Okay. There you go. Okay. So that's the image. All right. So we've got an image of a lady boxing. She's got her gloves on. She's just beading with sweat, and looks like she's working out hard. All right. So normally, right, I start with this, but today I'm going to ask Jatinder, what do you think that means?
I think this one is going to be all about immersion. Getting into, when you're doing something, you get into it and going with the flow with it, and then what kind of possibly could stop you from getting into the immersion flow as well, of fully putting yourself into something. Okay. That's what I think it's going to be about, just off the top of my head.
Good. Well, the best example I can give is, have you ever been in a situation where, and let's just take it back to childhood, okay? You're playing with, let's say, your siblings or your friends, or it might be cousins, right? And you're having a good play, and then all of a sudden the play starts to get serious, okay? And the seriousness starts to escalate out of control. And as it gets out of control, you might lead to you getting into trouble, might lead you to start fighting with one another, some kind of altercation or conflict between you and your playmates, okay? So that really kind of talks to the playful seriousness part of things. But then there's the other side of it, where you've got the serious playfulness, okay? And this is where there's times that you have to be serious about something. Let's say it's you're working on a project, and you've got to have an air of seriousness and professionalism around that. But if you become too serious about it, it becomes really rigid, and it sucks all the life and joy out of that work that you're doing, and no longer are you really having any fun or joy. So the idea, and the second aspect of it is serious playfulness, is to bring some playfulness into the seriousness of the element, okay, of that topic that's in progress. And one of the best examples, another good example I can give is when you're disciplining children, for instance, right? It's you want to get a clear and a serious message over to them, but you've got to do it in a way that they don't disconnect, and that you can communicate the message effectively. And one of the best ways to do it is to be playful and have some humor and laughter about that. Okay, so this is the kind of like the paradox. Okay, the seriousness and playfulness paradox. Okay, and really the thing is they both need to exist at times. Okay, and if you go completely serious, right, you become rigid, and it start to fatigue you over time, because it's all the tension and the stress, okay, that comes with that. On the other side, you can be completely playful, but then lose all sight of seriousness, and then it just becomes a joke and becomes silly and gets out of hand. Okay, and sometimes it just gets out of hand. Someone can get hurt, or you end up, just like I said, you get into conflict, or end up fighting, and so on. So it just gets, you can get carried away with that, right? So this is the idea, is that it's a continuum, and really neither is missing at any one point. You want to try and maintain it in the middle, where you've got a nice balance of playfulness and seriousness, without being caught up in either or, and adapting to a given scenario. So sometimes you might have to slide on the scale a bit more towards the playfulness side, and other times a bit more to the seriousness side. But just make sure that you've got the right balance of both, because if it's the extreme, then something's going to give. Like I said, it either gets too silly, right, or it gets too serious, right? And that's really kind of the idea behind this. Have you had any such experiences?
I've had plenty, but I was just thinking that I was way off in my in some. Well, I suppose there's an element of immersion in there, if you're getting into it, but then it goes out of hand. But yeah, I mean, it actually reminds me of a story.
You were right. So don't discount what you said, because you were right. Because the playfulness part of it is about immersion, is just allowing yourself to submerge in the play aspect. But you can also do the same on the seriousness side as well. You can immerse yourself in being too serious, and now you've kind of sucked all the life and joy out of the process that's taking place. So absolutely, the immersion is how you get into either or a combined playful seriousness, serious playfulness state. And it's really important, actually, that to kind of carry yourself through life, that there is a level of buoyancy when you do things. Because when you become, and we all do it, and we've all been there, and we've all felt that sometimes we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders and our back, and you know what, your neck gets tight. Your neck gets tight, right? But why? Because that tension starts to build up back then, and people will say, I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, and if you notice, their shoulders will be square and all the way up, okay, like this, okay, and they'll end up with neck problems, they'll end up with headaches, okay, and that's how your body starts to express the mental motion that's going on in your mind, okay. And also the mental motion is also a reflection of what's happening in spirit. So your spirit's not settled either. So if your spirit's kind of frazzled, right, your mind's going to go that way as well. So it could work this way up, it could work that way up, it could start in the mind and go that both ways. So this is what we have to be careful about when we embark on anything. And it's funny, just before going into this conversation, we were just talking about a little experience I had earlier on today. I went to the opticians, and a lovely lady just did a quick checkup on my eyes, but she was like boom, 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 boom. She was so kind of engrossed in getting me in there and getting me out of there as quickly as possible, that she was going so fast, that she was so engrossed in get them in the door and out the door as quickly as possible, right? Because even the GPs are doing that, right? They
Mm.
work on numbers, which I think, takes away the servitude that you have to your patient. But she was going so quickly, she wouldn't even finish her own sentence.
Wow.
And then she was expecting an answer from me, right? So that, to me, was the seriousness aspect,
Seriously.
right? That was mandated by her governing bodies, right? Managers or whoever that saying, all right, well, every hour you need to get 6 patients in and out, 10 minutes each, right? And that's what the GP guidelines are, for instance, right? And I've got a very close friend of mine. He's an optician, and he gets scrutinized for taking his time. But and I'll tell you, and he's done this on several occasions. But the first time this happened was he took his time, and despite his manager and not particularly liking him taking too long with patients, he picked a brain tumor in one patient's.
Wow.
During one patient's checkup, because your eyes are the window to not just your soul, but to your whole body, right? It's a map, okay? And it can tell you if anything's wrong. And he picked out a brain tumor and he got him referred to the hospital. Happened to be the patient came in late, right? Too late, right? So that one didn't turn out too well in the end for the patient, but he picked it up, and he continues to do it that way because. It's important that that you're not so serious and so regimented that you've got to have a little bit of space to breathe. And the way I kind of found myself dealing with my optician today was just having some playful banter with her, and that kind of took the edge off her, and she kind of calmed down. By the time I left, she was even walking slower. Whereas before she was like darting around this little room, so it was quite interesting to see how that kind of played out.
No, that's definitely an interesting one, because it's like you've gone into a situation and you've completely changed the vibration of what's going on just because of the way you're being present in that space, right? And I used to get that often when I used to be in my workplace. They used to call me the calm one. This is like cool as a cucumber, right? And it was funny because every time they had a situation, they'll come up to me. And one of the girls I used to work there, she just like rub my arm, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm just calming down." So yeah, definitely. So that just shows that you can be in a serious situation, but you can have a playful moment to actually, calm the situation down even, and vice versa, right? So you were asking earlier on about, any examples of that. And I was just thinking back to when I was a kid, and I was with my cousins one day, and we were playing, pillow fights. We're just doing whatever's going on kind of thing. And as we're getting into this, there were I remember 2 times. There was one time when we got into it, and it turned into a serious moment between 2 of the cousins, because they just, got into each other's face, started almost like punching each other, right? And we all had to calm it down. So that was a moment of that. And then the other time it happened was similar, but somebody threw a shoe, right? And whoever it was going to was moved out of the way, and it hit the mirror, and the mirror just cracked, right? So then all of a sudden everybody became serious, like, what do we do now kind of thing, So it's it's almost like an oscillation, isn't it? It's like polarized situation, but it goes to the extreme.
Yeah. Exactly. You got the seriousness and the playfulness. Yeah. Do you know what the funny thing is that when you kind of grow older, right? What changes? Just the context of the game.
Exactly.
Changes, right? So your pillow fights now become, corporate projects and programs.
Yeah.
Or whatever, initiative you're working on, all right? And that includes family, right? Raising children, right? Big project there, right? So the thing is, the mechanics are still the same. And I tell you how you can tell that actually adults are just big children. When you take adults with children, you put them into a playground, right?
Yeah.
You see how
and then let go,
adults,
and just
the adults start to behave in a playground situation. they're not far off from the children themselves.
That's
You know,
right.
the stories and all of that stuff, and you just think, really, have you
Yeah.
not evolved?
No, that's, you
But
know,
yeah, not
that's
everybody, not everybody, but I have seen that. Obviously, there's always groups that, can't let go of that and still kind of is so ingrained that you can see it come out. But honestly, adults are just big children, right? They, as they say, the toys just get bigger.
but you know what's interesting about what you shared there is that this thing can happen over time as well, right? Because I remember I went to an event we did many years ago. We organized we had a comedian come down who was teaching how to do stand up, and we thought it'd be interesting just to go there and take part and just learn for what they were sharing. And we had a lady there who was a lawyer, a solicitor type of background. And when she originally came, she was very, very rigid, very serious, very like it must be done in this particular way, right? And as we went through the day, as we got to the end of the day, right, she just became relaxed and started to relax a bit more, and mellowed out. And by the end of it, it was a completely different person,
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that, it's like, I was thinking about it, thinking that she kind of always been like this, right? She wanted to go into this line of work. And I felt that she went into this line of work and, she had been doing it. It went in like enthusiastic or playful or whatever. And then over the years, it just became serious and monotone and the same repetitive, that it formed her personality in those kind of situations and scenarios. So it's not just like in the playful, in that kind of sort of situation, but it could be in life situations as well, where you've started to do something with a playful attitude, but it's become serious, right? And vice versa. So that was quite interesting to see, and how the comedy made her change her view and how she was so much more fun to be around as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's a quote that I've got in this koan, at the end of this koan, that I'll read in a moment, that kind of really talks to that. But, we underestimate the power of play in life. And, if we stop playing, then, it will be filled by the seriousness instead. And that seriousness, is, I think it's a vacuous space where all the fun and the life energy kind of leaves, and you're left with a void, right? A void of, let me say, potential misery and hard work and fatigue and stress and tension. And, over the last couple of years, the one thing that's kind of really kind of surfaced and been quite a focal point for health has been mental health, right? And even the coinage of the words mental health. And we've even had our princes in the UK, Prince William and Prince Harry, also talk about mental health and support charities around mental health, in particular because as children, when they lost their mother, it was hard on them, poor kids, and they clearly weren't able to talk about it until recently. And I think it's important that in order to maintain our sanity, to maintain our mental health, and to maintain our elasticity in our mind, so that we can work easily, and be creative and have fun and enjoy the present moment. Playfulness is really key. Honestly, it's so key. And sometimes it's simple as having a joke or making a joke, about what you're doing or what you're working on, or so on. Yes, okay, we understand there's political correctness, and those political correctness boundaries have been defined because people joking at the expense of somebody or something, denigrating someone or something, right? Whether it was an individual or a community or whatever it might be, right? And that's not right either. So you can be playful without causing any damage to somebody, without offending someone, right? And yes, there's a flip side that, now society's kind of hypersensitive to political correctness, and they can people get offended at the smallest things. Well, again, that playful seriousness aspect plays into everything, right? So let's just take that, you've got this political correctness boundaries, right? And then if you widen those, but that's hypersensitivity around that, right? Then is there any space left to make a joke, have a laugh, or is that going to be construed as harassment or bullying or something of a denigrating nature? Well, this is where we have to be careful, right? But when you're doing things through a genuineness, through sincerity, and you don't mean to offend, in general, people will know. If you're joking with people that especially, people will know your nature and they won't take offense. Okay. Because they understand you. One of the key parts of that is that you've got trust and rapport with one another. So they give you the space to make jokes about things and not be offended by it, even though in other settings it might be offensive, but actually they know that you're not actually trying to cause harm. You're just trying to lighten somebody's load in a given circumstance to make them feel better, to lift their spirits, to encourage, motivate, maybe provide some kind of determination. So yes, we do have to be careful, but at the same time, don't get paralyzed by the seriousness again. You can't be playful and then have that governed by seriousness, because really seriousness that's driving that, right? So you see how there's a really complex interplay here, right? And the key thing is to be yourself and be natural and think before you say something. It's important that you're aware of the people in the room and you're aware of their sensitivities. So you don't say something that you're gonna, as I say, you don't put your foot in it, because you're trying to be playful, and actually, as a consequence of being playful, you're having a serious outcome, and that's happened as well. Right. I'm sure everyone's been in a situation at some point in their life where they've actually tried to make a joke innocently and it's been construed as offensive, and you just think, shit, no, I didn't mean it that way, and it just didn't come across the right way, or just interpreted the wrong way, or they caught the wrong end of that joke, or the wrong part of the things that you said, and all of a sudden, you're now conflicted with yourself, because actually you was meaning to have fun and be playful, and actually now all of a sudden is all turned sour and mute, right? So that's also happens, right? So you see, playful seriousness, serious playfulness is a very highly complex dynamic, and it's not a duality. It's not black and white, and this is the thing. There's many shades of many colors in there, and it's not.
I'm smiling because it reminded me of a talk a certain person we know did, where on one of our stages, right, where they shared an experience, a life experience of when they were younger and a situation they went through. And the way they said it was just hilarious, but it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be offensive anyway, but it could be taken seriously, right? So we had to decide whether we actually share this content in the video or not, and we decided to cut it out, right? Because it could have been taken the wrong way. But it was one of those scenarios, wasn't it? People probably wondering what that is. Don't worry, one day we might share.
Well, I think there's now one of the contributors towards people interpreting, the way they interpret things is belief systems. Now, remember that the word belief means that you believe it, but you don't know it. Because if you knew it, you'd say, I know. You wouldn't say, I believe. It's like, I believe in God, but people don't say, I know God unless they know God. Okay? Two very different things. So in general, people's belief systems are led by things they don't know, and therefore they've got a set framework around as their understanding on that belief system, right?
Yeah.
But because beliefs are based on something you don't know, technically what they don't know might not be, and what they believe in might be different. In other words, what they don't know might be wrong, right? Or might be different. Okay. In which case, they should be open to changing their viewpoints, changing their belief systems, because their belief systems might not be accurate, might not be correct, might not be precise, right? Might be misleading in a given context, for instance. Again, very subjective, but you get the idea, right? So on that basis, the main thing is that when you are being playful, just be aware and sensitive to who's in the room and where they are, right? When I teach martial arts, the first thing I do is I get into the room and I kind of sense where everyone's at, right? And I've gone in, right, with the intention to teach a class which is going to be really physically intense, and I look around the room and they're all of their steam is blown. They've got nothing in the tank, right? So if I take them through an intense workout, it's just going to fatigue them physically as well as mentally, right? And they don't need that. What they need is something that's going to help re-energize them gently and slowly bring them up to the point where they need to be, rather than, say, beast them, right? That's not the idea, right? So I change the class, and I have to do that. Every single class I have to adapt to what's happening in the room where people are. Why? Because I need to meet them where they are and then take them where I want them to take them. And sometimes where I want to take them in that session is not where they want to go. So I'll have to change what I teach, right? So all of a sudden, the class changes and it becomes a different thing. Why? Because I'm doing my best to try to connect with what's happening in the room at that moment in time. And I think if we act consciously like that, and I'll put my hands up, sometimes you get it wrong, right? But at least you try, and with a positive intention behind that, highest positive intention. And if you've done it with that, then you can still sleep well. Right. There's always going to be when you do something, especially when you put some material out into the world, there's going to be somebody that sees it slightly different to you, and that's okay. But just know that this in particular, this Martial Manpower podcast is shared through love and highest positive intention, right? To help raise human consciousness, to help align people to their bodies, minds, and spirits, and ultimately towards self-realization. Self-mastery is just a set of tools to help you get in tune with your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual faculties, right? Self-realization, understanding your true, authentic, high self is the ultimate objective. So when you start to operate through that modality, then everything else just sits perfectly, and you'll know when to be playful, when to be serious, and when to mash them up appropriately. Okay. Part of that comes with the self-mastery element of it, learning how to first of all know yourself, right? You really need to understand yourself first. Where are you as an individual, and what is it that you want to convey to the people in the room or to the world, and how do you express that? And everybody's got to learn these things. You got to learn, like you got to learn how to walk, you got to learn how to talk, you got to learn how to articulate your ideas, you got to learn how to communicate and convey those so they really resonate with your audience. So that you can really bring the best out of people. And this is what we're trying to do here. And I hope people take this message with love, because it's all about love, right? The true, authentic higher self is about love. because when you really truly understand that, you'll recognize and realize that's what it is. And this is not I believe that's what it is. This is me saying I know that's what it is. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that. So hopefully that, this playful seriousness, serious playfulness, the koan is kept quite simple on purpose, okay? Because all the koans in the book are about a page or 2 sides max, okay? Just to keep them light and digestible. But in this podcast, as you can tell, you can really start to unravel the playful seriousness, serious playfulness aspect of this koan and the underlying meaning behind that, which starts to expose the complex interplay and the dynamics between both aspects of that. They're not separate from one another. They're part and parcel of each other. One exists in the other, just like the yin yang, the Tao, right? And as a consequence, you can't separate them out. You can't really ever you shouldn't ever really be one or the other. All right. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense.
No, absolutely. I just wanted to just on a few points, no, 2 points there, which I was going to share was that when you were sharing about like we're doing this podcast kind of thing and people are listening in on it. Now, the interesting thing is that every single person is somewhere in their mind in relation to what's going on in their life, their thoughts, their environment, their surroundings and whatnot. So when somebody's listening to information, they're in a situation, sometimes they're coming from that filter, so they could potentially view something from that filter. And it's an interesting one because it requires the other person, or it requires people to have this kind of openness, awareness about, like you were sharing about how you're teaching in the room. You're looking at the room and you're adapting to the room because you got that awareness to see what the dynamic is so that you can actually, connect better with where they are,
Yeah.
So, and it works, like you were saying, it works both ways, because if people are able to actually say, hang on, how's this relating to me right now? And what's the context in which it's happening to right now? And how can I take this on board? It allows people to actually get the most of it, as opposed to going, thinking, well, this doesn't make sense because of X, Y, Z, and putting a different scenario on it, right? So that's an interesting kind of thing that can also happen. And the other thing you were sharing about was the joy. We were sharing about life and stuff, but it also happens in businesses as well. For people who are business owners, they get into something because of the sheer love and joy of it. And over time, they're doing it and it seems monotone and they've lost that joy, and they don't know why they're doing it. It's like hypnotic rhythm, as Napoleon Hill refers to it as, right? It just creeps in on you. So, bringing that joy back into that playfulness back into what you're doing can add such a different and deeper dynamic to what you do. And it's just like children, isn't it? I remember sitting in the park once with a friend and we were talking and he got distracted and he saw the kid just like talking and playing with the pigeons, and that playful nature of what was going on there. And it was just like how we were having this serious conversation. It turned into this playful thing. And then we came back again thinking, just being present means just enjoying what's going on in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. No, do you know what? It's interesting you say that as well, because, some people you can't play with, right? They're so serious and they've got that modality. That's their the modus operandi, right? And that's it. And so if you play with them, it's not going to be welcomed and received in a positive light. So on that note, I think you have to also be aware of who you can be playful with. Okay, whereas there's other people that are always joking, always smiling, always being goofy and silly. But I've got friends like that are very, very successful business people, right? But they're always playful. They're always, joking and laughing and take joy out of making other people smile, right? But my point is, you have to, when you become aware of who's in the room and how you can interact with them, you adapt your communication style to that person. If you're addressing a group, then you have to be aware of how far you can take it to the people on the extremes of that continuum in that room, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to upset anybody, right? So that's what I would call maintaining an ecology within your environment, and that shows honor to the people in that space. Okay, so it's showing them respect, showing them honor by not violating somebody's boundaries. Okay, and I think that's standard, but it's very hard to do, to understand where people are at, so that you can walk into a room and walk out with a deeper connection with everybody in there, rather than push people away. And there's always going to be people that have got something going on in their lives that are in the room that you don't know anything about. And with all positive intentions, all highest positive intention, right? You say something that will benefit everybody but that one person, because something's gone down that day, that week, that month, that year, or that decade, right? That has upset them, right? And you didn't know. And you didn't know, and you can't do anything about it, right? And so
yeah.
you got to take it on the chin. You got to take it on the chin, right? You got to take it on the chin, and you know what? You're going to feel it, okay? Because you didn't mean to do it, right? And you had no idea. So because you had no idea, it wasn't like you was being insensitive. You was actually acting through a higher place, but just didn't connect with a person in their highest with what should I say is based on where they're at, okay, and the experience that they're going through. Therefore, it comes off potentially damaging. Okay.
Yeah.
And innocently as well. And I think, if that happens, just, be kind to one another, that, and recognize where people are coming from. They're not always trying to hurt each other, right? People are not always trying to hurt each other. And people that are trying to hurt each other are the ones that are already hurt. Okay. And they are usually mechanisms to prevent that happening again. So one of the koans is hurt people, healed people, heal people. Okay. And it's just recognizing, where that individual is at that moment in time, and trying to meet them where they are, especially once but you can't win them all. Unfortunately, you can't always make everybody happy, but you can act consciously and do your best. And if you've done that, at least that way, you're serving through your highest true, authentic, higher self.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of an incident we were both at once, when we were at a dinner, and we had a speaker who was sharing, and coming from the right place, right intention, sharing to the room, and the message didn't resonate with one of the people there. And they had an outburst. They just had an outburst. They left the room. But we were fortunate that we were in the room, because a lot of the people there were, the kind of heart-centered type of people. So the whole room actually brought the energy into a calm space at that stage as well. And that's an example of one of the situations where you just don't know, how the person sometimes is going to respond in front of you. And it's not even like with, intention that you try to hurt them or anything. It's just the way they took on the message. So that kind of situation, the scenario can happen as well. And it's like you said, you just become aware to it and try to manage the situation in the best way.
Absolutely. So this is where, I think it's important that when you have a playfulness and a seriousness, you try and get that balance right, that you're in the moment, you're present in the moment, you're aware and connected to what's happening in that space, and then just be yourself, be natural. Because sometimes when you try too hard, it becomes too serious, and that playfulness starts to crack away, right? It starts to peel away because you're trying too hard, and it comes through, so it's important that you don't try too hard, that you try and have this natural flow about the moment, being in the moment. And fluidity and flow is really important, honestly. Being connected in that moment I walk into a room with my students and just energetically feeling what's going on, taking in all the information throughout all my modalities, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. And then I've got my audio to digital going off, right? Potentially, but most importantly, I'm taking the energy. I'm tuning to the energy that's going on in that space, and that energy speaks louder than anybody's physical and auditory expressions. The verbal and non-verbal, much louder, and that's only because I've been practicing it for such a long time that you start to get better at it. But most certainly, you can validate and verify that energetic sense that you're getting from your audience or from anyone, a particular individual, for instance, through their verbal and non-verbal. Okay, that should be there just to reinforce that. But when you first try and practice, you're actually trying to capture that information through the verbal and non-verbal communication first, and energetic comes afterwards, right? That's a very advanced way of trying to communicate with somebody, trying to connect with somebody, and that's only going to happen through higher and deeper states of practice that get you into higher states of consciousness. Okay, if that makes sense. All right. So yeah, I mean, we've really kind of started off quite slow in this podcast, and it ended up, unraveling a whole bunch of scenarios and complexities and dynamics that are related to this topic. And I think I'd like to actually read the koan itself, so that you can kind of get the simplistic nature that we're trying to get across, and you'll see how all of the stuff that we talked about already actually kind of expands on it hugely. So I start off by saying, have you ever been playing and got so carried away that you ended up landing yourself in trouble? Maybe a prank got out of hand, a joke went too far, someone got hurt in all the excitement, you broke something, or you offended someone or something. You needed to exercise a little caution and seriousness on top of your playfulness, but just enough to prevent the situation getting out of hand while still allowing yourself to enjoy yourself. Have you ever been serious and got carried away and lost your temper, landing yourself with the aftermath of shame and regret? Maybe you were stressed out about getting something done quickly, someone upset you and you lost it, or you had a disagreement with someone about something. That was when you needed to exercise a little playfulness on top of your seriousness, but just enough to prevent the situation getting out of hand while still allowing yourself to make your point. George Bernard Shaw famously said, "We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing." All right. And that was the quote I was alluding to, referring to earlier on, when you mentioned playfulness over time, over age. So I hope that makes sense, guys.
That's been fantastic, Sifu. It's plenty of wisdom bombs in today's episode, and again, thank you for sharing that, Lex. And for the viewers and the listeners, the koan book is basically called The Art of Thinking Without Thinking. It's available at Amazon. Obviously, you could go to martianmindpower.com as well, and all the other books are there as well. And so before we sign off, Sifu, is there any final words, or shall we just conclude here and keep everyone waiting for the next one?
I think George Bernard Shaw sums it all up, keep your inner child alive and make sure you keep playing, but be just sensitive and aware of who's in the room, and be consciously fluid, but a child is really the best example of really being in the moment and playing innocently, I think we can take a lot of inspiration from young children and how they bring that joy from simple things, some from innocent things, into their lives, and go from one moment to another moment without carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. And if there is something that upsets them, they have this amazing capacity to just drop it all and they just carry on like nothing's happened. And I think if we all kind of operated with the ability to let it all go, and then continue as if it didn't happen, but maybe carry those lessons forward with us, we'd all wise up so much quicker, but have fun doing it. And if we can take that away as a concept, something that we've been practicing as children growing up, and I do sincerely hope everyone's had an experience to do that. And I know obviously some children don't because they have traumatic childhoods, but I hope even those people that have grown up can see the beauty and innocence in that, and can start practicing that from where we are right now, going forward, because that will help us kind of release all the trauma that we experienced in the past, so we can create a new future from this moment onwards. And that will certainly help make the world a better place to live in, a but more understanding world where we can all enjoy one another's company as one family. So I think I would conclude it with that.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much, Sifu Lak. And guys, we hope you enjoyed that. And so until the next one, we see you soon. Thank you very much.